Hello class, Mr. Hansen here. Just going to talk to you a little bit about section 2.5 in your book. I do have a sore finger here, so I apologize for the big bandage in your field of view. Excuse me. Alright, so we're going to talk about formulas. And you've all been exposed to formulas many, many times. For example, let's just start with a rectangle. Okay, rectangle has 4 right angles. And what if we wanted to find the perimeter of the rectangle? Well, if you remember from your geometry days, you know that the sides opposite a rectangle are congruent. So we have, if we call one side W, the other one's going to be W. And if we call the long side the length, L, both sides opposite are L. So one formula that you've worked with before is called perimeter. I'll use P for perimeter. And what we want to do is we want to add all the sides. So think of perimeter as the distance you would have to travel around the whole object. Or in other words, if you were going to build a fence around this, how much fencing would you need? So we have 4 sides, right? So we have one that's labeled W, a second that's labeled W, and then 2 sides that are L. And if we combine like terms, our first formula will be P equals 2W plus 2L. Okay, so the question is, well, how do we use this? Well, if we want to find the perimeter, let's say in this example we let W equal 5 and the length equals 7. Well, it follows that all the W's are going to be 5 and all the L's are going to be 7. So we would have the perimeter, if we follow the formula, would be 2 widths, 2 times 5, plus 2 lengths, 2 times 7. So the perimeter of this is 10 plus 14, which is 24 units. Now I didn't specify what units. If that's the case in your problems, just write the word units. All right. The whole idea of this section 2 is to be able to take a formula, and perhaps we want to take this formula here and solve for one of the other variables instead of P. So let's solve for L. So all that means, class, is we're going to take this formula and move everything to one side and leave L all by itself on the other. Okay, so let's try. P equals 2W plus 2L. Alright, just follow your algebra rules. If we want to move a whole term. So we want everything else away from the L. So I'm going to subtract 2W from both sides. See if I can get this in the field of view. So they cancel on this side. So we're left with 2L equals negative 2W plus the perimeter. And one more step, if we divide both sides by 2, now make sure if you're going to do this, put that whole expression in parentheses, and the whole expression has to be divided by 2. You could write it like this. So L equals negative 2W plus P, all divided by 2, or you could write it like this, negative 2W over 2, divide each term separately, like so. And if you want to clean this up, that would be negative W plus P over 2. So you'll be asked to do a few problems like that. Next, I want to talk about just a review of geometry. In geometry class, you remember you learned about a concept called vertical angles. So let's say we have line AB, and we intersect a second line. We'll call this CD, line CD. So line CD intersects AB at exactly one point. Bet you never guessed I was going to label that E, huh? So what vertical angles are, the angles that are formed when you intersect 2 lines, the angles straight across from each other are called vertical angles. And if you remember from geometry class, those are congruent angles. So the measure of angle CEA is equal to the measure of angle DEB. So for example, if I would put, let me look at an example in your book, 4x plus 19 here. So this angle, this measured angle here is 4x plus 19, that expression. And this angle is 6x minus 5, and we know these are congruent, we can set each expression equal to each other and solve. So 4x plus 19 has to equal 6x minus 5. Okay, so if we solve this for x now, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. So we'll have 19 equals 2x minus 5. Then I will add 5 to both sides because I want to group my constants together. So 19 plus 5 is 24. And if you guessed that we have to divide last, you are correct. And if we had time, we would check that answer, but we get x equals 12. So you'll see some problems similar to that as well. A couple other formulas that you're probably used to. Maybe it's been a while. The area of a rectangle. So if we want the area of a rectangle, if we call this the base and this the height, area equals b times h, base times height. Okay? If we're talking circles, remember circles, the distance from the center point to a point on the circumference is called the radius. And if we know the radius, we can find the area. It's pi times the radius squared. The circumference is the distance around. Think of circumference as the perimeter of a circle. So the perimeter of that is 2 pi times the radius, or another way to write that is pi times the diameter. Remember, the diameter is the distance of a chord, that segment, that connects 2 points on the circumference but yet goes through the center. So these are some other formulas you use. The book will introduce some other ones as well. All right, that's a little introduction to formulas and what you need to do with them.